Haribo, Nitai Gora, Haribo. So that's a Shishimad, His Divine Graces. Jai Gaur Haribo. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naranchaivam Narottamam Devim Saraswati Vyasam Tato Jayamudaya Nasta Parashiva Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavati Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhagavati Naishtaki. Jai, so we shared earlier that we are filling in for Dhruva Prabhu, and yeah, he requested that before he leaves. So he left. So we are requesting permission from Tarka Prabhu, senior devotee on the call, and all the Vaishnavas that we can humbly try to share some realization from this amazing, beautiful, wonderful pastime in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Such a beautiful pastime. Yeah, so many lessons that we've learned. So we're reading Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 12, and we are reading text 22. We are in the last part of this beautiful pastime, Vritasura's glorious death. Okay, and I think Partaka Prabhu has it in the chat for everyone. Okay. Do you want to? So reading Srimad Bhagavatam, I'm sorry, text 22. Yashya Bhaktir Bhagavati Haro Nishre Yasheshware Vikrid that Tamam Tambodo. Okay, let's see what this says. Virikta Amritamam Bodho Kim Shudrai Gatakoda Kai. Okay, so I'm going to say that again. Yashya Bhaktir Bhagavati Haro Neshre Yasheshware Vikridato Tambodo Ambodho Kim Shudrai Katakodakai. Yashya Bhaktir Bhagavati Haro Neshre Yasheshware Vikridato Mirtambodho Kim Shudrai Katakodakai. Okay, I think I see that you are all reciting the verses. So Tarka Prabhu, do you want to recite, or I think that's what I saw yesterday.
Sure. Yashya Bhaktir Bhagavati Haro Mi Kreyeshware Vikridato Mritam Bodao Kim Shudrai Katako Dakahai.
Someone else?
Yasya Bhaktir Bhagavati Harao Nishreyaseshware Vikridato Mritam Bodhao Kim Kshudrai Katakodakai.
Anyone else? Okay. Yajya of whom? Bhakti, devotional service. Bhagavati, to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Haro, Lord Hari. Haro. Nishreyasya Ishvare, the controller of the supreme perfection of life or supreme liberation. Vikridata, swimming or playing. Amrita Ambodho, in the ocean of nectar. Kim, what is the use? Shudrai, with small. Kataka, kataka, Udaihi, ditches of water. Do you want to read the chapter? No? Okay. Translation. A person fixed in the devotional service of the Supreme Lord Hari, the Lord of the highest auspiciousness, swims in the ocean of nectar. For him, what is the use of the water in small ditches? Srila Prabhupada's purport. Vritasura had formerly prayed in Bhagavatam 6:11-25. Na naka pristam nacha paramish tayam na sarva bomam na rasa hipatyam. I do not want the facilities for happiness on Brahmaloka, Swargaloka, or even Drugvaloka, not to speak of this earth or the lower planets. I simply want to return home back to Godhead. This is the determination of pure devotee. A pure devotee is never attracted to any exalted position within the material world. He simply wants to associate with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, like the inhabitants of Vrindavan. Srimati Radharani, the gopis, Krishna's father and mother, Nanda Maharaj and Jashoda, Krishna's friends and Krishna's servants. He wants to associate with Krishna's atmosphere of Vrindavan beauty. These are the highest ambition of a devotee of Krishna. Devotees of Lord Krishna may aspire for a position in Vaikuntha Loka, but a devotee of Krishna never aspires even for the facilities of Vaikuntha. He wants to return to Goloka Vrindavan and associate with Lord Krishna in his eternal pastimes. Any material happiness is like water in a ditch, whereas the spiritual happiness eternally enjoyed in the spiritual world is like an ocean of nectar for which a devotee wants to swim. Wow. So beautiful. We want to swim today. Oh, Magyarati Virandasya, Yanagana Salakaya, Chakshur Amritam Yena, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha, Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam, Stapitam Yena Bhutale, Swayam Rupa Kadamayam, Dadati Swapadantikam, Vandeham Shri Guru, Shri Yuta Parakamalam, Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha, Shri Rupam Sagrajatam, Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam, Tam Sajivam, Sadvaitam Sarabhutam, Parijana Sahitam, Krishna Chaitanya Devam, Shri Radha Krishna Padam, Sahagana Raghunata Lalita Visatam Vitamsha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu, Dinabandhu Jagapate, Gopesha Gopika Kanta, Radha Kanta Namastute. Tapta Kanchana Gourangi, Radhe Vrindavaneshwari, Rishabhanu Satale, Vanamami Hari, Turubhyascha, Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha, Patita Nam Pavanebhyo, Vaisnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar, Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nitai Gora. So I'll read the translation again. A person fixed in the devotional service of the Supreme Lord Hari, the Lord of the highest auspiciousness, swims in the ocean of nectar. For him, what is the use of the water in small ditches? So we're continuing, as we said earlier, with this pastime. And Ekabir, do you want to start? Or? Yeah. Okay, so there's some lessons that we've gleaned from hearing this pastime over the past, I'm guessing, weeks. And we're at that point where we're going to be learning about, well, I believe some of the other texts we learn about selfless service. We learned about trust. And today we're going to look at steadiness and some of the qualities that comes from being steady in devotional service. I did get on a call yesterday, myself and Ekavira did get on a call, and we heard Nagari Krishna Prabhu, and he was speaking about pure devotional service, which is what this verse is referring to. This devotional service of the Supreme Lord Hari, the Lord of the highest auspiciousness. So when we think of devotional service, this verse, as I heard Agar Krishna Prabhu mention, which is like it's kind of the foundation of our path, of our bhakti path. It's kind of the verse that, yeah, as from the very onset of becoming a devotee, we're introduced to the Bhagavad Gita, and we're introduced to the nectar of devotion, and of course, Shishopanishad. We don't want to forget those other books. However, the foundation of the Vaishnava path, or the Bhakti path, is given to us in the nectar of devotion, which is what we're going to be hearing about in this beautiful pastime as we come closer towards the end. And so that this verse is, of course, Anyabilasita Sunyam. And verse is described in the nectar of devotion as love. And it's explained. So Lord Hari, he's the highest of all auspiciousness. The highest of all auspiciousness is that person, the only person that can actually give us true love. What is that? What is that true love? It's a tangible expression of the desire to please someone. So we see in this pastime, of Vritrasura, his only desire was to please Lord Vishnu, please the Lord. This is the reason why it's explained that even though Vritrasura had a demon body, he was actually a devotee. So His Holiness Japataka Maharaj writes this wonderful book, and I quote this book all the time because it's one of my favorites. And that book explains, am I a Vaishnava or am I a devotee? Well, which one am I? And of course, it's a sweet, small book. However, in that book, we can understand what's a true Vaishnava, what's a pure Vaishnava. I was hearing a tape this morning of Srila Prabhupada. He gave this class in Mayapur in 1972. And he was explaining about what is a sadhu, what is a real sadhu. And he says a sadhu is someone who is engaged in devotional service 24 hours a day. Engage, which means what? What does that mean for us? You know, what does that mean for me, for someone that's a product of Kali Yuga, to be engaged in devotional service 24 hours a day? Well, it can mean there's many aspects of what that can mean. However, the most important is to be able to remember Krishna as much as we can during those 24 hours. A real sadhu remembers Krishna 24 hours a day. And so, of course, if a person is remembering the Lord 24 hours a day, they're experiencing the love of the Lord. They're experiencing this anusilanam, this love, this desire to please, simply to please another person. And so we see Vritrasura, he was ready at this point where we are in this conversation between, we're just now completing actually the conversation between Vritrasura and Indra. And we're learning that this is a beautiful dialogue that they're having, because they're speaking about devotional service, even though they're fighting. And so we're hearing that Vritrasura is, he's fully, his whole consciousness is fully immersed in the Supreme Lord. And Indra's a little bit bewildered by that. And I believe yesterday, Agari Krishna Prabhu talked about the wonder of that he's like, how is that possible? You're supposed to be a demon. How are you like meditating? How are you ready to give up your body, so that we can make it into an armor? How are you doing that? He was a little bit bewildered by that. And we understand from that dialogue that Vritrasura is very clear He was very clear that if that's what the Lord wants, that's what he's going to do. So his consciousness was fully immersed in pleasing Krishna, pleasing Vishnu, whatever Vishnu wanted. That's what he was going to do because he was a dedicated servant to Lord Vishnu, even though he appeared, as a demon. I was thinking about that. This demon mentality, one of the mentality of a demon is to take revenge, right? Situations happens, all kinds of situation happens. We see this in Bhagavatam all the time, different situations. And yeah, then we see this revenge can be it can be a personality because we see Virtusur is created, right, to take revenge. And so this is one of the blocks, from developing this pure and anusilanam, this pure love for the Lord. And so then the other point that's important in terms of this verse, this very this foundational verse of our path of bhakti, is what is true love? What is true love? What is that? Krishna is the ultimate in love. All of us are awakening our love for the Lord. All of us want to be loved. All of us want to give love. That's just the nature of the soul. And so, what is this true love? So, it's like explain that love is true and pure when it's free from all self-interest. And certainly, we see Vritasura. He was such a huge demon. I mean, he could have fought Indra much longer than he did. However, when he understood that Krishna had given Indra instructions of how to kill him, then he didn't care anymore for his body. He didn't care about protecting anything. He was just like, okay, this is what the Lord wants. He had no interest for himself. He had no interest to keep living, to necessarily win. Although he fought, he kept fighting because this is a part of the Leela. However, in this Leela, what's important to know is that Vritasura, although he was such a strong demon, as soon as he understood what Vishnu wanted, he was like, okay, that's what I'm going to do. So that is Anya Vilasita Sunya. Anya Vilasita Sunya. When we experience true love, we're willing to give up everything, anything for that personality. Just like we understand that in terms of, on some levels, our devotion, our dedication, our desire to serve the spiritual master. So Krishna had explained that to Arjuna. Tadvidi paripatena paripashena sevaya upadeshantate jnanam jnanastattvadashinaha. That the way to serve the spiritual master is to have a certain consciousness, which is a consciousness of submission, right? And an eagerness, to serve the spiritual master. So we see Vritasura had this mood. He was eager to serve Vishnu, even though he was in this, tumultuous, just huge battle that was creating all kinds of destructions for all the devatas, right? Everyone was disturbed. And so this true love, this love is this is the verse that's also the one of the explanation of this verse, Anukalena, that true love is reposed in the divine, the most sacred, right? This is the most auspicious, Hari. This is where we repose this love and to selflessly please the Lord. And so we know Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has come to give us, a way that we can do that mercifully, given us, in this Kali Yuga, a way to develop this mood of love, this verse, that is implanted in our hearts by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada. Anybody that studies Bhagavatam or studies anything about, trying to understand Bhagavatam, they will always quote this verse. And so this verse is like, how do we say, it's like one of the threads that help us to understand, our real position in this world, which is servant of the 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 servant. And so, yeah, Lord Chaitanya came to help us to understand that with a simple and an easy method, which is to chant the holy names of the Lord, call in the holy names of the Lord. And so I'm going to see if Kabir, do you want to say anything at this point? No, please. Yeah. So we're attempting to do this together. And yeah, we are both trying to share whatever small realizations we may have. And then I'll go back to this verse that we're speaking on. Okay.
So, Vitasura, of course, it's amazing, and astonishing to actually see this personality, Vitasura, which Indra expressed in Nagari, elaborated on yesterday. But we see that the devotee can manifest in any category, even in the category of demon, like Vitasura. At the same time, Vritasura was not really a demon, it's a devotee in the form of a demon. And we see so many different, or some other situations where we have Mahajans even in that form of the demon. Prahlad Maharaj, Bali Maharaj. They are even such great devotees that they're considered a Mahajan. So, but Madhvacharya expresses the three classes of living entities: the devatas, the demons, and then the ordinary living beings. And so, in what category do we fall in? Obviously. Well, as Rajalil expressed, it's on his Japataka Swami, he had that really wonderful book, which is, when I first saw that, it was kind of like a shocking reality, because when I picked up the Japamala and started chanting Hare Krishna in Association of Devotees, I considered myself to be a devotee or a Vaishnava. Then looking at that book, it's like, whoa, are you a demon or Vaishnava? And so, yes, we may find that if we really are honest and sincere, we've been given great fortune by the devotee, the pure devotee, in which Srila Prabhupada elaborates on in this particular verse. And that devotee, Srila Prabhupada, has made all of our good fortune by disseminating Krishna consciousness movement throughout the world. So Madhvacharya, he expresses that, he said, they're in our category of ordinary human beings, who may have some tendencies, and I say that because Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu elaborates even more so in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, that everyone is actually a devotee. It's just that we're actually covered, and that love of Godhead is dwelling within each and every one of the living entities. It's just to cover. And so Madhvacharya expresses a point, and of course in the Uddhava Gita, Krishna is expressing to Uddhava the story of the Avanti Brahman. And the Avanti Brahman comes to the conclusion that, all of these different challenges that we have in material consciousness, it's not that these challenges are sources of distress, happiness, and distress, actually. It's not the fault of the demigods, it's not the fault of the body, it's not the fault of the planets, it's not the fault of karma, or Kala. I'm not blaming Krishna for that, Krishna in the form of time, Kala. It's the fault of my own mind that is the cause of my distress, happiness and distress. The way that in which we actually codify our given situations. And so Madhvacharya expresses that, he gives I wanted to share this with Srila Prabhupada was speaking about, because it's kind of elaborate. He says that the material miseries arise When the conditioned soul of demoniac mentality identifies himself with the gross material body, when he when they identify themselves as gross material body, they undergo the constant drowsiness and unquenchable sexual desire that burns all mental peace and serenity to ashes. When the person identifies with the prana or the life air, they suffer from hunger, and by identifying with the mind, suffers from panic, fear, hankering that ends in disappointment. When they identify with intelligence, they suffer profound existential bitterness and frustration deep within the heart. When they identify with false ego, they feel inferiority, thinking, I am so low. And when they identify with the process of consciousness, he is haunted by memories of the past. When a demon tries to impose himself as a ruler of all living beings, all of these miseries expand simultaneously. And so this is the nature of persons who are, as Japataka Maharaj pointed out, in the category of demon or demoniac. And what places one in the category of demon? They're absent of the anyabhilasita sunya, actually trying to be a servant. As Srila Prabhupada, we were just listening again, Srila Prabhupada just hammers that point home constantly, practically in every lecture that he gives. You know, he points that point out. We are not the Purusha. We are not the enjoyer. We are Prakriti. We are to be servant. When one tries to be the bogey, there's only one bogey, one person who can actually accept service, and that is Krishna himself. And so when we try to usurp that posture of Krishna, we find ourselves in this demoniac category.
Krishna's yogi. Okay, so yeah, I was just listening to what you were saying about the yogi and bogey, the yogi and the bogey. And as you were speaking about that, I was thinking about this verse actually, where here we see that Vritrasura is, you know, he's his motivation, you know, his intention is to show that even though he may be in that demoniac body, that he's fully surrendered to the Lord. He's fully surrendered to Lord Vishnu. So he explains in the first part of the verse that he just simply wanna, you know, be a devotee. He's offering that prayer, right? The prayer in the very beginning of the verse. And in that prayer, he's saying he doesn't want any of these higher planetary systems. He doesn't want to go, you know, any of the material planets. He's done with anything material. He doesn't want any of that. In his consciousness, he already did not want any of that because he's a pure devotee, right? He's a devotee of the Lord. He's a devotee of Lord Vishnu. And so Prabhupada, which I found interesting, Srila Prabhupada, in the purport, he refers to Goloka Vrindavan. Now, this verse is really intricate. It's very deep, actually. There's so many points to it. We know that Vritrasura is actually going to go to Vaikuntha. That's where he's going because he's a devotee of Vishnu. Yet in the purport, Srila Prabhupada speaks about Goloka Vrindavan. And Srila Prabhupada immediately takes this mood of, okay, a devotee can aspire to go to Vaikuntha, but that's not what Srila Prabhupada is giving to the devotees. That's not what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is giving to devotees. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is giving us Goloka Vrindavan. And so Srila Prabhupada in that mood of the Vaishnavacharyas, he is emphasizing that. And he takes anywhere that he can do that, emphasize this point. he does that. And so in this verse, that's what he's doing. He's emphasizing that, okay, yes, Vritrasura, he's a devotee of Vaikuntha. However, a devotee of a Vaishnava devotee is always aspiring to go to Vrindavan, to go to that place where they can play, right? They can have fun with Krishna. And so he explains that in the purport, that a devotee wants to simply associate with the personality of Godhead in Goloka Vrindavan, in the mood of being one of the gopis or being Krishna's father and mother. So having these different rasas, right? And so in Vaikuntha, we learn that there's, I believe it's 2 rasas that's prominent. Dasha is prominent. 2.5 rasas are prominent. However, in Goloka Vrindavan, all the 12 rasas are prominent. And I'm not going to go into that because it's technical. Well, it's technical for persons like myself. It's not so technical when a person is truly pure, when a person is really engaged in devotional service 24 hours a day. All of this makes total, like, yeah, makes total sense. They're swimming in the ocean, so they completely, fully understand these different rasas. Prabhupada also says, though, don't get too much, like involved in I mean, the rasas, it's important to know them. However, don't do that so much in the neophyte stage, because what happens is we might misunderstand. For example, 2.5 rasas in Vaikuntha, the conditioned material mind might think, oh, that may not be as no, it may not be as spiritual. But actually, Prabhupada explains that in the spiritual world, there are 6 different divisions of the spiritual world. And so a devotee can choose, or a devotee can have a desire, a mood to want to serve the Lord in one of these different 6 areas of the spiritual world. And I wrote these down because I thought it's kind of a little technical, but at the same time, everything that's in Prabhupada's books is so very important. Because what Prabhupada is just so amazingly detailed. What happens is that when we start reading Prabhupada's books, because we're getting purified, or I can speak for myself, because I'm getting purified, my tendency is I might hear something and move it through my conditioned material mind, when it might have a totally different meaning when somebody is pure, right? They absolutely will embrace that all auspiciousness of the Supreme Lord, that big ocean of the Supreme Lord, and not make minimizations of any of the spiritual aspects of the Lord. And so, yes, we understand Goloka Vrindavan is the ultimate abode, and that's shared with us, in so many different aspects of the scriptures, right? So Chaitanya Bhagavat tells us that the spiritual abode is considered to be the ultimate destination of the devotees of Sri Gaura Hari. The spiritual abode of Krishna, known for its eternal divine pastimes. The spiritual realm of the abode of Krishna, with all the blissful pastimes of the Lord. That is what happens as we transform into developing these moods of devotional service. And so we also understand from the Bhajan Rahasya, and I'm just quoting some of the places that I was looking at this mood of why Srila Prabhupada emphasizes Goloka Vrindavan as opposed to any of the other spiritual places, which I believe is, you remember, Ekavir, I was sharing that with you last night, Dwarka, Mathura, Vrindavan, of course, Navadvip, of course, the Vaikunthas, and there's one other, can't remember. But all of these are spiritual, they're all spiritual planets, and there's innumerable Vaikuntha planets. So to begin to understand Krishna and who Krishna is, Prabhupada keeps us on Ayodhya. Thank you, Kala. Yes. Krishna keeps us focused on the fact that, Srila Prabhupada keeps us focused on what is Vaishnava Siddhanta, and what are we aspiring for? What is our purpose? What is it? What is our goal? And our goal is actually, by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy, Madhurya Ras. And Madhurya Ras is like beyond anything we can even begin to understand, because that's that personal, intimate, playful pastime with the Lord. And we hear about that from the Brahma Samhita, what that place is like, what that mood is like, who's serving there. And in the Vaikuntha planets, it's a different mood of service. It's that mood of awe and reverence and veneration. And even in the Vaikuntha planets, we have Lakshmi Devi, who wants to go to engage in Goloka Vrindavan, but somehow she's not able to. So it's just so very intricate to understand the Lord, and how the Lord expands, and how he makes so much availability in so many different ways. And so that's what Vritrasura, he's in that mood of, I don't want any of this. I just want to go. I just want to go and be with Vishnu. Just want to go back and go be with Vishnu. He's in that mood of dasha, servant, veneration, awe and reverence. He's in that mood of service. And so this Prabhupada tells us, he explains to us that, yeah, we don't aspire to go to Vaikuntha. And why is it that we don't aspire to go to Vaikuntha? Devotees of Vishnu, they may aspire to go to Vaikuntha. This is the purport. But a devotee never aspire for the facilities of Vaikuntha. He wants to go to Goloka Vrindavan. Even though both Vaikuntha and Goloka are beyond the material realms. Sometimes as devotees, I remember, hearing devotees, oh yeah, Vaikuntha, it's kind of like talking about one of the material planets, and the tendency to be sectarian is just so much in our material condition consciousness. Oh, Vishnu, I've heard devotees sometimes just offend Lord Vishnu, because because they didn't have knowledge, because we can only understand these higher truths through really absorbing in Srila Prabhupada's books by following the process of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, which is to chant the holy names of the Lord, to be able to get that purity of consciousness. And I believe Tarka Prabhu mentioned this yesterday, that, yeah, it's very important to understand what's in the material realm and what's in the spiritual realm, because sometimes we can kind of, concoct our own way of thinking, because we want to make, some of the things in the material realm, we want to give them some power, so to speak. And so from what I could understand from that conversation from Tarka yesterday, Krishna is so kind. He makes himself available in so many different ways. However, to get bhakti, to get this pure love of Krishna, to get anyabhilasita sunyam, that can only come from a pure devotee of the Lord. And actually, it's very, very rare for a person to be able to engage in pure devotional service. And so some of what's available in Vaikuntha is very spiritual. Krishna even goes to Vaikuntha and plays, right? So, this is Krishna also. Vishnu is Krishna. They're both the same. There's a little percentage. There's some things that are different. Krishna has a sixfold bending form. Different little things are there. And there's, of course, different pastimes. However, yeah, it's important for us to really kind of imbibe that point that there's so many levels of understanding Krishna. However, Srila Prabhupada has given us, by the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, this understanding that we are Krishna Bhaktas. We are desiring to have this amazing rasa, which is Madhurya rasa, which is beyond anything I can understand in some ways, because we get to play that, by caring for the deities in some ways. However, this mood of just playing with Krishna, being with Krishna, just serving Krishna in this mood of just not with the awe and reverence that's there in Vaikuntha. And so one other point I did want to make on here, Ikra, did you have any? Sorry, did you? Yeah. This last point where Prabhupada says any material happiness is like water in a ditch. whereas spiritual happiness eternally enjoyed in the spiritual world is like an ocean of nectar, which a devotee wants to swim. So Rupa Goswami, he explains to us in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu that there are three aspects of happiness. Happiness from material enjoyment, which is through sense gratification. We know that's temporary. We know that we can go all the way up to the highest planetary system, but we will, eventually come back down because we can only, sense gratification is temporary, no matter how high we go, no matter where we go. If it's not in the spiritual realm, if it's not in the spiritual planets, right? We can always come down. Another level of happiness is by identifying ourselves with the Supreme Brahman, by Brahman realization. There's a certain level of happiness there, but it's not personal, right? It's very impersonal. And so again, Srila Prabhupada, he teaches us about how to be personal. Actually, there are classes today in these times where people are talking about radical personalism, how to connect, because we're so, in my case, my own case, coming from a very impersonal background, it's important to understand that that's not the ultimate in happiness. I come from a background where it's like, and yeah, that's great, but it's just not, interactive. It's not, you don't have no relationship. And then there's happiness that's engaged from pure devotional service, And so Prabhupada tells us that of these three, happiness that comes from Krishna consciousness is the topmost of the happiness. So it's not that people don't get happiness experiencing God on different levels of awareness. There are some levels, but the topmost is to really be able to experience that ocean of bliss, as being explained in the purport, which comes from associating with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, comes from serving the personality of God. And so I'm gonna okay, so we have a few more minutes, and I just want to share this verse from Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur on the last message that he gave. He gave 12 verses for his own spiritual development, which is quite amazing because he's a pure devotee of the Lord. And the sixth one, he says, what's favorable, authorized practices and devotional service. He says, my austere vow is constantly devoted to the lotus feet of Sri Hari. In order to execute that vow, I have accepted the following qualities as my own endeavor. And so pure devotional service gives us some qualities. We will be able to see these qualities as our material conditioning become minimized. And so Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, I practice great humility in my dealings with others. I try to keep simplicity and purity prominent in all of my practical arrangements. I maintain extreme tolerance in all types of favorable and unfavorable circumstances. I can certainly say that, yeah, that's one that I'm praying for imbibing that quality. I offer all respects unto others, regardless of who they are. I feel genuine compassion for all living entities and act accordingly. There are many transcendental activities which are recommended by the great devotees who are fixed up, unalloyed devotional service to the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But these can be found and described in his in full described in the books that are full of the imperishable character and pastimes of Mahaprabhu. So Bhaktivinoda, he has 12 of these. And what these, yes, I will definitely, Dina, let you have these quotes. They're quite amazing. In this verse, it also mentions about the determination of the pure devotee. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in the last stanza of his last instructions, he says, from determination to transcend Maya by following this verse. As a spirit soul, my natural tendency is to be eternally situated in the loving devotional service of Lord Hari. However, due to the strong power and influence of the Lord's Mahamaya, I have somehow plunged deeply into the fathomless ocean of material sorrow and grief. I shall transcend this world of Maya and go to the spiritual world only by faithfully following these self-imposed vows every day. And the only way I will get the strength to follow these vows is by attaining the mercy of all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. May their causeless mercy and softened compassion, which wards off all illusion, become my exclusive friend and guide for all time everlasting. So we have these instructions from Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Srila Prabhupada, when he was leaving his body, he also left many instructions. However, one of them that caught my eye was material motives should be given up and everything favorable should be engaged in Krishna's service. Then there will be success. And so Vritrasura was successful because he gave up his body to be used by it as a weapon for Indra. Really, they wanted his bone. Vishnu suggested getting the bones, and Vritrasura just gave it up. And so we can check ourselves, to see how we're doing. We can test our devotion and see how are we imbibing this Anyabhilasita Sunyam verse practically in our lives. So we can see how selfless am I? Do I still have desires for personal gain? Even in a subtle way, I remember many years ago, I had a friend that always used to talk about POD, used to call me actually PAD, POD, profit, adoration, and distinction many years ago. And I always think about that, yes, these are the subtleties that can be there. Am I steady? This is this part of the story is about the steadiness of Vritrasura. How steady am I in my practice? When there are obstacles and difficulties, do we lose our drive and our energy? Am I serious? How serious am I about devotional service? Listen to a class of Satyananda Maharaj, and he says, "Am I convicted?" He mentions that Prabhupada in a GBC meeting in 1972, he spoke, and Thakur Prabhupada probably knows about this. It was in Mayapur. He spoke to his GBC man at the time, and he asked them, "Are you fully convicted that Krishna is God? Do you fully believe that Krishna is God, the Supreme Personality of Godhead?" And Satyananda Swami explained that there was a quietness in the room. And then Prabhupada spoke up and he said, "I am fully convinced. I am fully convicted. I have full understanding that Krishna is God." He said, "So you just, follow my instructions." So basically, he was, helping the devotees, to understand, to be aware. How convicted are we that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead? Krishna is so vast, It's not like, I love God and that's it. I mean, that's it, really, in one sense, but it's like, who's God? And then when we start looking into who's God, we then become like, ooh, that's a lot. Are we sensitive? How open are we to receiving feedback and improving our devotional service? How we got to be open to that. Sometimes we're not. And how simple are we? Simple? How simple are we? How open are we? To improving. How much are we conscious of how Krishna and the Vaishnavas may be feeling about our devotional service? I close with this. His Holiness Bhaktitirtha Swami used to give us little books, and he would tell us to go to other devotees, to let them tell us what we need to work on to improve our devotional service, because we're servants of the servants of the servants. And sometimes we didn't always like that, but that was his way of helping us to check in with ourselves. Ekavir, you want to close us out? Thank you.
Your last point was all of these different things. It's absolutely astonishing using the mood of yesterday's verse, that all of these things can be unfolded in a simple process. It's given by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Prabhu Nityananda by chanting the holy names.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Thank you very much, Dear Prabhus. The next time, Ekavir Prabhu will give the class next Friday. So it's time for the deities, I believe, or if there's any. Hey, see your Madheshwara says, yeah. Haribo. Any comments? I think we have a few minutes.
Yes, what a rich class. I mean, what to even comment on? I just wanted to share some verses you reminded me of. One of them was 6:17:28. Narayana para sarve na kutaschana bibhyati svarga apavarga narakeshra pitulyarta darshanaha. Devotees solely engaged in the devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Narayan, never fear any condition of life. For them, the heavenly planets, liberation, and the hellish planets are all the same. For such devotees are interested only in the service of the Lord. So just like we're seeing in the purport, how Richard Suarez said he didn't want to go anywhere except he wanted to go back to Godhead. And then a few other verses, like when we're talking about how we don't want to be the bogey, but the yogi, right? I think that's the phrase. It reminded me of 529 of the Gita, Bhoktaram Yagya Tapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram Suhridam Sarva Bhutanam Gatva Mam Shantim Richachi, the peace formula. A person in full consciousness of me, knowing me to be the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities, the supreme lord of all planets and demigods, and the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities, attains peace from the pangs of material miseries. And then this verse attaches to 266, which also discusses peace. Nasti buddhira yuktasya nacha yuktasya bhavana nacha bhavayata shantir ashantasya kutasukam. One who is not connected to the Supreme in Krishna consciousness can have neither transcendental intelligence nor a steady mind, without which there is no possibility of peace. And how can there be any happiness without peace? So would you talk a little bit about actually having that transcendental intelligence and a steady mind?
Go ahead. Okay, you can. Well, Rupa Goswami, he explains it so nicely, because transcendental happiness comes from, and in this verse too, right? This ocean. When we swim in this ocean of bliss, it comes from having that awareness, that intention of wanting to offer everything to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, offer everything to the Lord. 24 hours a day, taking pauses with ourselves to see, what am I doing for myself? What am I doing for the Lord? Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj always used to say, Krishna sees what we hold back. We can do so many things. We can say so many things. We can, be so knowledgeable in so many ways. But what are we holding back? So that transcendental consciousness comes from the mercy and the grace of the pure devotees of the Lord. And you quote that very famous verse, right? What's the Tadvidi? What is it? Is that 3? I can't remember where. 3, 4.
434.
434. 434. That Tadvidi verse, tells us how to start developing that mood, right? And it's a gradual process in so many ways. Yeah. Thank you, Dina. Thank you, Jana. That was beautiful. Thank you for the verses. Yay. Amazing. Gina Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, I second what Jana said, that it was so potent and just very enlivening. It makes me happy just listening to you both. So I had a question along that line, that in Bhakti, there's a seeming contradiction of the gravity of the situation that we're in and trying to go back to Godhead. But also we can see that exalted devotees are so joyful and happy. Like Prabhupada, was grave one minute and then joking the next. So I'm just wondering, sometimes for me, it's easy to get just caught in the gravity of the situation part and forget that bhakti is fun and there can be lightheartedness like this. So I'm wondering if you have any advice on how to keep bhakti fun.
How to keep bhakti fun. Hey, Kabir, you want to share?
Yeah, that's a challenge, balancing gravity and understanding really what is gravity. Gravity is gravity, meaning being not a stoic. Stoic gravity actually means being serious. And so therefore, we find that the devotee is serious about the process of Krishna consciousness, is serious about in the association of devotees, is serious about chanting the holy names. But at the same time, they're actually joyful and following in the footsteps of the great acharyas. They are all joyful and joyfully engaged in the process. And that joy actually comes through grace. That joy actually comes through grace because as we're engaging in the process, you know, when I was reading what Madhvacharya was expressing about the different miseries as we are attached to have different attachments to the body, the mind, intelligence, life affairs. There's certain miseries that come up when we're engaging in the purification process. And so therefore, when we're engaging in the process of devotional service by chanting the holy names, we're becoming purified. And so it may be kind of challenging to display this happiness because we still have attachments. We still have attachments. We're really not that akama devotee that we really want to aspire to be. We're still sakama devotee. We still have the tendencies of material desire. They're there, but we may not be honest enough to actually, look at those particular desires. And so therefore it's important to pray to the spiritual master, pray to Sri Nam Prabhu that I don't want to have these different anarthas manifest. Because also one thing in the association of devotees, as we're going through this process of purification, if we're not really honest, we can not only be miserable ourselves, but we can actually pass on or share this with those in our association. We can make the lives of those around us kind of hellish, as we're going through the process of devotion, especially engaging in too much austerity. So it's important to pray to the holy name, pray to Vaishnava. Rajalila was expressing one thing that Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj gave to us that could help us practically by going to the devotees that are closest to us and asking, what can we do to actually improve in our devotional service? It's not easy to do that, though. It's not easy because, yeah, some of the things that come up can be kind of painful. We may not be the great devotees that we want to be. So,
And I was thinking like that seriousness, to be serious is very important in devotional service because being serious helps us to be attentive, and it also gives us a desire to constantly improve. So we don't want to be like mundane. However, that same seriousness, the other side of that coin is joy, because we will become joyful because as we deal with the details of devotional service, devotional life, and as we are constantly in that mood of improving, as Ekavir Prabhu said, asking others to help us, then that will bring us the joy. That devotional service, because devotional service is all about love, right? It's all about being joyful. So one of the simple things that I'm trying to learn to do in my everyday life, I write about it every day, is how I can transform things that appear to be negative in my devotional arena and see the blessings in it. How can I see the blessings that's there in situations that may make me think that I'm so serious. I want to be so serious, as Ekavir said, that word stoic, to stoic, I'm sorry, stoic, where I'm just like, I'm rigid. So if I'm rigid, where's the joy? And so how can I look at that, whatever situations may be in my arena that makes me want to be rigid, and see, well, is there some blessings in that? And look for the blessing in it. And then that will bring the joy. So that's something I work on regularly.
That was one point. It's not possible to be joyful in the process of devotional service without the mood of gratitude.
Yeah.
It's not possible. And sometimes that joyfulness in devotional service really means to be grateful in devotional service, constantly grateful. And that was the point you're making about seeing the blessings.
Yeah. Yeah.
When one is grateful, then they can find joy in every situation.
Yeah. Nagari Krishna said, I'll share one last story about this gratitude. I remember when my spiritual master left the planet, people would come to me. I was in Mayapur. We were there with his ashes. And people would be coming to me all the time asking, how are you? How are you feeling? And I was just so not in a space, to talk to anyone. And I remember praying to Krishna, Krishna, please, I don't want to be rude. I don't want to be offensive. I don't want to be mean, but I can't talk to anyone, And I remember Krishna in my heart, because you remember, we don't want to forget the Lord is in the heart. What I got from just really crying out, I got just be grateful, be grateful. And so then I started saying that to people when they would ask me, how are you? And I'm grateful. I'm grateful. And from that, I started actually doing a journal on being grateful. So gratitude is powerful, very powerful. Nagari Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna Prabhu. Thank you so much for a very enlivening class. It's so nice to hear from you. My question, I guess, in terms of the waters contained in the small ditch, those could represent false shelter, or at least a type of shelter that is being presented by mainstream society. So, for example, being in a Black African body, one ditch that's presented is that if you identify with being Black, then you can get retribution. Like, for example, in South Africa, there's one demagogue politician who's agitating everyone that one bullet, one farmer, one bullet. And therefore, America is now saying, okay, all these South African farmers, you can come to America and farm. We'll give you asylum. So they're actually seeking asylum coming into the US, And so basically, is that, okay, they're presenting this kind of shelter. And so what happens when you come into the Society of Devotees and there's some designation that you identify with, which is related to mainstream society. But the Society of Devotees can't immediately give you a higher taste so that you can detach yourself. So the propaganda, for example, with being Black and African is that, well, meat eating is, it's synonymous with the culture. So yes, okay, you can say in your Vedas that Africans, they worship, they've historically in the past, they revere the cow, but the cow we eat, and so that designation can be. Then I come into devotional service, I taste prasadam, giving up meat eating is not a problem. But then I then read, Prabhupada's books, this and that, and then I find like some controversial statements which I can't fully digest, and therefore I can't fully assimilate, or at least I can't fully enter into, say, the this is Chaturvanyam, into the social system, of Varnashram, for example, because they're having information that I identify with. So how, like, what do devotees do in that situation where the society, you're like caught between a rock and a hard place? So mainstream society is presenting a small ditch, but in Vaishnava society, it doesn't seem like they're offering complete shelter. And so what do you do as a devotee? Where do you go?
So
Yeah.
I look. Okay, I'm going to be quick, and then I'll let Ekavir. I want to be quick because well, thank you so much for your vulnerability, your transparency. First of all, yeah, we're a family, so it's always wonderful that we can share with each other some of the things that may be troublesome. And yeah, it is a fact that we have pure devotional service and Yabilasita Sunyam. And then we have, I'll just share this. Somebody shared this with me the other day. That we often hear when one door closes, another one opens. However, most of the time people don't tell us what's in the hallway of those two doors. So what you're sharing reminds me of what's in the hallway of, the door to material life closing and the door to spiritual life really awakening, the door to transcendence. So in the hallway, yes, there's so many disturbances. And I can only share with you, Prabhu, my own personal understanding of this. So there was a period of time where I became also a little bit discouraged by some of the things I would read in Srila Prabhupada's books, and I didn't get enough, I guess, answers to satisfy my intelligence. So I stayed in that place for some time, and I brought it to some leaders' attention. And then somehow Krishna arranged, he saw that in my heart I was troubled. So he made an arrangement that there would be a committee that was formed that I was invited to be a part of, that would take my troubles to the GBC level. And so we brought it to the GBC, about some of these things in Srila Prabhupada's books. And I was being a little revolutionary, to be honest with you. I wanted to take some of those things out of the book, and some things are taken out. Some were taken out. And we had support of many of Srila Prabhupada's very senior devotees. At the end of the day, though, this was my realization. And I believe it was Devarita Swami that helped me with this, if I remember correctly, because there were a committee of us and we were a little bit disturbed, to say the least. And he said, and I think this, Agari Prabhu, all of these things are social constructs, right? There's social constructs in this world of illusion. And at the end of the day, what is important, is to connect deeper with the holy names and to connect with Krishna and to know these social constructs will be there. And some things we can change and some things we won't. We took it all the way to the level of GBC. To be honest with you, we had 3 days with the GBC presenting these things. Some were really upset. Some thought we were like being offensive to Srila Prabhupada. But it was just that our hearts were troubled. And some were very supportive. I remember his Holiness Giriraj Maharaj, he was so supportive, so understanding, so sensitive, so wanting to see how to help. He went over some of the points in the books with us, word for word. It was just amazing to see. And then to see others just like, okay, they thought we were being offensive. At the end of the day, though, I think the GBC did address some of those things, and some things have been taken out of the books. And a lot of this is, Prabhupada, he was very expert in what's that word that he often used to explain to people that Prabhupada does? What is it? But anyway, it's like he creates things. There's cognitive dissonance. We learned about cognitive dissonance. Srila Prabhupada does that sometimes. He puts things in his books that make you just like, like, what? Just like here in this verse, we know that Vritrasura is worshiping Vishnu, but then Prabhupada is talking about back to Godhead. That's a coin Prabhupada phrased himself, going back home, back to Godhead. That did not come from Vritrasura. That came from Srila Prabhupada. So, it's kind of like that. You got to be like, oh, wow, look at the details. So that's the reason for the seriousness of bhakti, is to be attentive to the details. And yeah, so I just wanted to share that, Prabhu. That's my personal experience. And thank you, Prabhu.
Yes, and Krishna expresses in the Bhagavad Gita, every action is covered with some fault. Even though as a Vaishnava acharyas, they're not faults that they actually are, engaged in when disseminating Krishna consciousness. But that point is that Krishna has a very difficult job in that he satisfies the desires of everyone, those that are atheists as well as those that are theists. And so everything that we experience in the world, we have the ability to make that choice, whether we're going to be theists or whether we're going to be atheists. We can fall upon in one of those two categories. And so one thing that I remember when I first came, and I always remember it, and it was a point that was drilled home in it, and it helped me dealing with certain things that I may have come across that, just didn't sit so well. And that is that, Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj expressed that one has to seek the essence of everything. We must become essence seekers, Vaishnava Sharagrahi. And so therefore we have to go beyond that, in which Srila Prabhupada expressed. The first thing that he tries to drill home is that you're not the body. And he keeps trying to drill that point home, you're not the body. And that's the first form of cognitive dissonance that Srila Prabhupada implemented in spreading Krishna consciousness. You're not the body. That shook practically everyone in the whole world through this core. What do you mean I'm not the body? Just that simple understanding. And so therefore, we have to be essence seekers. And essence seekers.
I wanted to share, this is something that I keep on my desk after going through that. That's the last thing I had with the GBC. That was a few years ago, maybe 3 years ago. And I took my troubles to them and just was very vulnerable and transparent. And after that, this came to me from Krishna, and I keep it in a little heart to remind me. This is a verse from Bhagavad Gita that says, "The thoughts of my pure devotees dwell in me. Their lives are surrendered to me, and they derive great satisfaction and bliss, enlightening each other and conversing about me." So I decided that was going to be my shelter. Just talk about Krishna, remind others about Krishna, and the social constructs are going to be there, and the dissonance is going to be there, and all this is going to be there. That's in the hallway. But remember Krishna, whatever we do.
Point. We will have kind of like the test. Are we going to be theists or are we going to be atheists? Are we going to go deeper and try to move beyond our own, mental mindset, our own mindset? Or are we going to actually try to, seek the essence and follow in the footsteps of the great devotees, what to speak of Mahajans?
Yeah. Yes, and Nagari Krishna, you're expert at that. You read Srila Prabhupada's books, you dissect it. You're so a super intelligent human being, and you are using your intelligence. You're dovetailing that intelligence in service to Krishna. So I think your future is very bright.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your answer. So this is my, I guess, other question, like last question. So if the dissonance relates to, because we know with Varnashram, it's really about progressive purification of sex desire.
Mhm.
So generally speaking, social issues, you can relate them to like some variety of sex desire. So it's like, okay, Prabhupada is saying I shouldn't be the body. Bhakti Maharaj is saying I should seek the essence. But what if I just can't do that? But I still want to be part of the community. So what do you do from a community point of view is that, okay, here's a devotee who still wants the acceptance and shelter of the association of devotees, but they can't seek the essence and, I don't know, like, just like find some niche as you found a niche, through your practice. It's just such a fundamental upadi that relates to sex desire, and you just can't do it. So it is a niche, and what is it like? Where can you find peace so that you can just like practice?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question, Agari Krishna Prabhu. And that's also, our Vaishnava acharyas, they're absolutely amazing. They're they give transcendence, but at the same time, they're so practical. And because they're, connected to Krishna, Krishna used them as the pure instrument. And so they are Trikalagya also, and Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he expressed many years ago that basically the future of uh, Krishna consciousness dwells in small groups, small groups, namhata. And so therefore you find that the devotees who are trying to serve Krishna and trying to be used as instruments and following in these great devotees' footsteps, they're developing these small groups in order to create a niche for devotees that just can't find some shelter in the mass, in the larger community. And we know the different categories that people of challenges that people face. And so therefore, we have small groups. And so that was Bhakti Vinod Thakur's, recommendation, giving us an understanding that this is how we actually can go deeper in Krishna consciousness. This is how we can actually reach out to more people by developing smaller communities, which are interconnected and all focusing on Krishna.
Yeah, with that understanding of Prabhupada wanted Vanashram, that's a fact. And, it's up to us to implement that. I mean, it's a huge task, which is why it's taken, a long time. However, as Ekavir Prabhu is sharing, in small groups, we can implement some of the essence of Vanashram, which is to understand that people are going to be serving Krishna with different levels of consciousness. They may have different skills, different. We're all individuals. We bring all of us have different gifts, that we offer. Prior to me and Ekavira trying to be more engaged in hearing the scriptures and sharing the scriptures, we were very much engaged in more managerial kind of mentality. And now we don't. We realize that's not our group. Our group is not really to be managers, So we can support those managers in however way we can. But that's not our group. So we need to make the choices. And we choose to help devotees that are a little bit confused about where they belong. And so that's why we facilitate many small groups, because there are many devotees out there that don't fit. Many, 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 so many. And now we're really happy to say that there are many, many small groups that are really addressing some of the issues that, like you're speaking about, Agar Krishna Prabhu, with love and with care. You know, Yashodev Prabhu, he's doing that there in State College, you know, him and his wife. I mean, they're trying to address some of these issues that, yeah, in ways that can still help people to stay with the focus, you know, which is to always remember Krishna and never forget Krishna. And to remember that we are, which is, we are in this transformation stage, right? Which is why Srila Prabhupada, you know, is so genius. He's so genius. He's like, yeah, we got to institute this Varnashram. And we can't force that in the communities where we are because we're all individuals. In these bigger communities, every individual have their own perception, their own mindset, their, you know, whatever, however they understand some of the things in relationship to the social constructs that's there in the illusion. We got to remember, it is an illusion. It's not, it's real, but it's not real, right? And you know that more than anyone. So we don't want to get too absorbed in it. At the same time, we have a life to live. So we got to see how we can live that life as comfortably and happily as we can. And that only comes from having Krishna in the center. That's the only way. And while we pray to get, you know, some help with these other things that may be going on with us, some support. That's right. The Devatas, they went to Vishnu for support. So human beings, we got to learn from that. That's one of the lessons of this pastime. They were like stumped, right? They didn't know what to do. They're like, okay, we got to go and beg Vishnu. So like that, we got to find our tribe. That's what I say. Find our tribe. I mean, for me, at one point, I had to go find my tribe. I had to go find my tribe. And I'm grateful I found it.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate your answer. And yeah, that's just filled with realization and experience. Thank you.
Thank you. Taka Prabhu.
Bring everything home.
Yeah,
Taka.
I want to thank you for a wonderful and thought-provoking class. This is getting better by the moment. I'm thinking about Agari Krishna Prabhu's issue, and one of my thoughts is that, and just based upon my own practical experience, that early in Krishna consciousness, for many devotees, there is a period during which there is some discomfort, sometimes issues over points of philosophy or even cultural issues. You speak of devotees having difficulty defining precisely where they fit in, and resorting sometimes to establishing situation in a particular group. But what I have seen over the years is that, given time, eventually, whatever apparent incongruencies may be experienced by an individual, eventually all of those things find their perfect resolution in Krishna, in devotional service. But the difficulty is that in the beginning we're just not at that point of being fully engaged, absorbed in devotional service, and our realization of Krishna is limited. So the advice given by Rupa Goswami is, find it in Upadeshamrita. He says, Utsahan Nischayat Yat Tat Karma Pravartanat Sangha Sangha Tyagat Satovrite Shabir Bhakti Prasiddhiti, that um, these are the six principles that are favorable to the execution of devotion and service. And particularly in the beginning, a person has to be mindful of those principles in order to help them to overcome some of the challenges. So he describes Utsahan being enthusiastic, Nishjayat, endeavoring with confidence, and Daryat, which is being patient. Srila Prabhupada speaks about being patient in a number of places. He explains how a young woman gets married and she's anxious to have a child, but it's not possible for her to actually have a child immediately. She has to be patient. It's sure that if she will eventually have a child, it requires some time. And the process of Krishna consciousness is like that coming to that stage at which all the apparent incongruencies find their resolution does not happen immediately. It doesn't happen overnight. So we have to be patient. Patience has to be cultivated, and we have to understand at least that there's a necessity to be patient, that things are not, everything is not going to happen overnight, but there will come a stage at which our consciousness evolves to the extent that we will not be in any way troubled by any apparent incongruencies. It just will cease to be an issue. We'll understand everything in its proper relationship to Krishna. Will understand everything in such a way that we will not perceive any problems at all. We'll become completely peaceful and satisfied in any condition of life, regardless of what may be happening externally within ourselves. Our relationship with Krishna will be such that everything else will pale in significance. So it takes time. In the meantime, one has to be determined to continue prosecuting the process of Krishna consciousness with confidence, with enthusiasm, with patience, with determination. All these different elements you have to cultivate, but confident that that the result will be achieved. Just have to stick with the process. So it's not that there is some shortcoming in the process of Krishna consciousness. Something is lacking or imperfect in any way. The process of Krishna consciousness is perfect. The problem is that our consciousness is not perfect, and it has to be made perfect, and that's a gradual process. So we have to be patient, but everything will be resolved in time. We just have to stick with it. Thank you again for your class. Hare Krishna.
Thank you for your wisdom, Prabhu, and thank you for quoting Nectar of Instruction. So wonderful. Well, that book is like a foundation. So much. Yeah, just a personal thought, just a personal reflection on that point. In order to be patient, in order to be consistently patient as we endeavor with enthusiasm, it really is helpful to have loving and caring devotees in our midst. And I believe, like for most of us, like even for you, Taka Prabhu, one of the reasons I'm guessing you're able to be patient and tolerant, especially with me, is because you have that foundational remembrance of that loving embrace of Srila Prabhupada, and that nothing can replace that. And I can say that for myself, that loving embrace of my spiritual master is what helps me to keep wanting to be patient, praying to be patient. So again, back to Agari Krishna Prabhu, living in a community where you're experiencing that kindness, that sensitivity, that loving care helps us to be patient. And when we don't have that, that patience becomes a little more difficult, even when we know that that's the foundational understanding of the philosophy. So we don't want to minimize that. Yes, as you said, Tarka, nicely, that it's our own consciousness, that kind of inhibits that love from being there in our association. And so that's a prayer for our community, that our community can be loving and kind with whatever someone might be experiencing. Maybe they're challenged with patience. How can we be loving and kind with that person, as opposed to, maybe just finding fault and thinking they're supposed to be on another level. But my Guru Maharaj says everyone is crying for love. Every situation is a cry for love. Every situation, and especially those situations where, our minds might be disturbed. That's a real cry for love. So thank you so much, Tarka Prabhu. Thank you very much. And Jana Vatsala, I see you have something.
Yeah, just some gratitude and a question. Thank you for Ekavera Prabhu bringing up 1848 Bhagavad Gita about fault finding, as well as 2.3.10 of Srimad Bhagavatam about akama sarvakama va, about the material desires and such. Another verse that came to mind, if we go back to the point of pure devotional service, is 2.1.6 of Srimad Bhagavatam. And so I have a little bit of a question about that and a comment about self-interest. But 2.1.6 of I Punsam Paro Dharmo Yato Bhaktir Dokshaje Ahaitukya Pratihataya Yatma Suprasidati. The supreme occupation Dharma for all humanity is that by which men can attain to loving devotional service unto the transcendental Lord. Such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted to completely satisfy the self. So I'll come around to my question, but my question is about the uninterrupted part. But one thing I was thinking about in terms of selflessness is that quote that we hear that you don't want to not think of yourself, not think less of yourself, but think of yourself less. And in terms of our self-interest, the Upanishad talks about how when you have a bunch of separate interests, the Sri Upanishad talks about how you can't really be unified. So we have our own self-interest in Krishna consciousness, but in the material world, we all have our own interests. So you can't really be unified in that way. It says something like that. So I think that's another interesting point. But in terms of uninterruptedness, I think I heard from some devotee, a senior devotee, that in Kali Yuga, that uninterrupted, that constant, like if you see the word constant, it means daily in Kali Yuga. Have you also heard this point? Or did I just remember this incorrectly?
You mean constant? I'm sorry, I missed the context. The
Like-
context
like-
is important.
I can't remember the verse, but something about like constant practice or constant, like in Kali Yuga, it doesn't mean constant like every moment of the day, 24 hours, but constant meaning daily is our constant in Kali Yuga.
Constant actually means what it is, constant, but it means manmana bhava bhakto. It means that everything that we do, everything that we experience, we see Krishna's hand behind it. Even if it's difficult for us to actually accept, we somehow, in some way, bring Krishna into the picture. And so constant is what it means. It's not easy. At the same time, that's what it actually means, by constantly thinking of Krishna. And so that's one of the reasons why Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gives the purport and gives the third verse of Shikshashtaka, that in order to have that constantly think of Krishna, one actually has to, take that posture of humility and understand that the whole world conspires for my Krishna consciousness, for to facilitate me to think of Krishna. And so, but yeah, constant.
Yeah, and Prabhupada says 24 hours daily, think about
Yeah.
Krishna. So even if you want to say in Kali Yuga, it's
Yeah.
daily, well, that's constant.
And that's,
That's 24 hours, Prabhupada says. Think about Krishna.
and that's you know, something happened. Krishna, Krishna.
Krishna, Krishna.
Constantly calling on Krishna's name. That's Kirtan in the Sadahari. That's the recommendation of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the Vaishnava Acharyas. The easiest way, Prabhupada, the easiest way to constantly remember Krishna is to call upon his name.
I remember Devamrita Maharaj, he stayed here with, he used to stay here at the Institute. And I remember the first time that I became aware that he would always just out of the blue, from nowhere, he would just say, Krishna, Krishna. And I was like, what's going on? Something wrong. But he would just like, Krishna, Krishna, from nowhere, nowhere, like he just, that was this. And that's just, I think that's just how he does his day. He just like constantly at different points, different times, whenever I guess he might be thinking about something else, he just like, Krishna, Krishna. And then I started trying to, I started just developing that just by hearing, right? That's the thing, just by us hearing, being in association of devotees that are sincere, we develop some of those qualities. And now I do that all the time. Krishna, Krishna. So even when I don't have that same, affection and love for Krishna, as I'm sure Devamrita Maharaj has. But anyway, it'll come.
Had its impact. I remember hearing one of Srila Prabhupada's godbrothers giving discourse, and he was speaking, and whenever there was a pause, you could hear him go, 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 and then the devotee would ask a question, and he'd pause and listen to the question. He'd answer the question, and then when there was ever a pause, go, go,
Yeah.
go. Said he's a goa bhakta. He's constantly calling on Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's holy name.
So what happened to Radha Damodar? It looks like we went all over the time.
We will not have the darshan of Sri Radha Damodar unless there is someone in the temple room, with a computer. So typically, it's only if someone's giving a class from the temple room we get darshan, and otherwise not.
Oh, okay. I didn't know.
Sorry
about that. Okay, devotees, if there isn't anything else, then we'll beg your permission to leave.
We'll have to send that information in the thread.
Yeah.
For WhatsApp.
Yeah. And thank you for those devotees that stayed on with the class. Thank you, Tarka Prabhu. Thank you so much.
I think, yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Haribo. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Have a wonderful Krishna conscious day.
Krishna, Krishna. Haribo.
Krishna, Krishna.